it would be easier to do it on a cube by cube workroom session atmosphere to describe it, I think, in a general way. There's a lot of variation in the way of approaching.
Yes.
Sorry.
There's, looking back at the whole breadth and scope of your career, you know, this early, like Irwin Allen type things, all the way up through, say, Munich, there's obviously been considerable artistic evolution and growth in your own approach and your own style, in everything, sensibilities, that kind of thing. And since so much of your music has almost instantly entered into the sort of mainstream and we get relatively immediately surrounded by it, do you ever find yourself hearing older things and thinking, I really just wouldn't do it that way anymore? Or having that sense of, you know, retrospective?
Well, as I said earlier to John, my personality is such that I don't particularly take great pleasure in when I listen to what I've done. That's just, like being self-critical, you know, I come here and think, well, I could have done better. I think anybody who writes music, or particularly, whether style is another thing, whether I can claim style is very debatable. But I answer this way, that a lot of what we do is journalistic in its execution. And any of us who write prose or music in a journalistic kind of setting, you will write the article for the newspaper or the magazine, and 2 weeks later when you read it, you're pretty horrified. You think, well, the prose could be so much more refined if I could have had another rewrite, or I could have had a week to get away from it and come back and look at this thing. It's the same thing with music, almost always, at least with me. You know, I'm writing the music, I'm on the stage recording with the orchestra before I've had a chance to do very much, if any, critical assessment of it and how it might be improved. That's one part of the answer. The other one is that because of the way I have to live my life, which has been luckily very busy, I am always looking forward to what's on my desk, what's today, and what's tomorrow, and what's the next week, and can I be good enough to get that material done. It doesn't help to look over the shoulder and think, well, that was good, that was bad. First of all, it takes time, and there may be something to learn from it, but it's a luxury that in this, I'll use the word again, journalistic kind of atmosphere that we live in is rarely to be had. I think relationships like that are in collaborative arts, put it that way, are helpful because you do get to, it's like a marriage, you get to a point of shorthand, or you don't have to go through the getting to know you niceties of every, you know, the first dates aren't necessary anymore, you think you've done it. That one other thing saves time. Meeting Steven Spielberg, I met him at Universal Studios. He was introduced to me by the late Jennings Lang, who was an executive there and also a producer, who actually had been the one that hired me. I worked for those 7 years that I talked earlier about as a composer for Universal Television. Who rang me up one day and he said, I'd like you to have lunch with this. There's a kid here. He's about 23 years old, and he's convinced all of us that he knows how to make movies. And he's done a film called Duel, which we all know about now, but I didn't know about that. We have lunch with him. He's got a film called Sugarland Express, and he wants you to do the music to the film. Yes, of course. I was a veteran of already 40 years of age or more, and had lunch with this then kid who was 23 years old. He took me to a fancy restaurant in Beverly Hills. We always kid about it. And he ordered lunch. And I knew that it was the first time he'd ever been in a restaurant in his life where he had to order wine. You know, he was a baby. A gifted, brilliant baby, clearly. And asked me, he said he loved music for Reavers, which is a film that I'd done earlier on in the 60s, and that he was writing screenplays while he was listening to the music of Reavers. And that his ambition was to ask me, the first opportunity that he had, to score one of his films. And I'd be willing to look at it. And I looked at it, it was Sugarland Express with Goldie Hawn. Very, very exciting and beautifully shot film. Agreed to do it and did do that. What that displayed was a virtuosic ability to shoot action and added action. The last half of that film, I haven't seen it in some time, but it would hold up extremely well. And Spielberg, even at that tender time, was a force to be reckoned with. A wonderfully benign force, by the way, but he's unchanged. He still has all that youthful idealism and enthusiasm and generosity in his character that I think are the things that really in the end endear him to the world's audiences, even more than his films. It's the guy behind him, I think, that they're in love with, and they're right about that. He's a good guy.
One more, yes.
I was going to ask, you've done so many with Spielberg, so many historically gruesome films. Like, I mean, not much, but just like you walked out of, after you said you saw Schindler's List without anything, you walked out, and that took 5 minutes, and you sat through Saving Private Ryan, and that's bounding session in Munich, and it's like, you have to see these scenes again and again and again as you're writing music for them, and how do you go about that? Like, do you try to distance yourself after you've seen it initially to keep yourself to be able to see these scenes again and again and again?
That's a terrifically good question. And it asks whether we become desensitized to these scenes. So if a horrible scene, it's a murder scene, or whatever, and you see it 8 times, and how much effect can it finally eventually have if it's a real 6 and you don't get to it until 4 weeks later? That's a great question because of that. And I'd like to answer it in this way, that I don't like to read scripts. And because when I go to see the film in the projection room, I will then know what's going to be happening next. And if I've read the novel, if I've had to read it, or I accidentally have read it, then I lose this wonderful opportunity of being a completely clean slate and seeing the film. The director will ask me to read the script. I will always say I prefer not to. Show me the film if you can. That's the best way to get an initial impression, which is, if you put it this way, a sort of virginal impression of what the film is, that I try to keep with me in the ensuing weeks, the 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks that I'm writing. How did I feel about that particular murder scene at that moment when it was a surprise to me and it was a gruesome, one-off, very affecting moment? And it's my very constant practice to try to recall that first impression and keep it fresh in my mind. I think, I like to think at least, it's helpful in the writing process. Good question.
There's a question in the back here. Yes.
I was just wondering, throughout your career, you've done such a diversity of things, both film music and concert music, orchestration, arranging, conducting. Is there any area in music which you haven't worked yet, or any type of music you haven't written yet that's something that's on the slate that you're very interested in doing?
Well, it is true. I've been very lucky. I mean, the first thing that goes through my mind in response to that is if I had more time to play, I think I would do that. One of these gentlemen earlier asked me how much piano playing I do when really very, very little, and I didn't extend the answer that long. The other night I just picked up the G major violin sonata of Brahms, which are 3 of them, as you know, I played all 3 of them, and just restudy it and amuse myself playing it. It's an area where if I had more time and would have been a better pianist, I think I would have enjoyed music making of that kind very, very much and still would. That's the first answer that does suggest itself to me. I think you people are all, I'm sure, very expert in the use of electronics and computers and Pro Tools and so on. I just think, at my point in life, 73 years of age, I feel like it's a little late in the afternoon for me to go back and I don't really have interest in all of that. My point of focus will take me back to an earlier thing I said in our chat, and that is the emphasis on that moment of performance that is the real turn on for me. And I think it's something that we as film composers need to bear in mind, that if we can be conductors, that's greatly helpful. The dehumanizing tools of click tracks and others can be tools, but we don't want to have to take away from the blood flow of the music making. So I think, short answer to that question, performance, chamber music performance, if I had the time, opportunity, and skills to do more of it.
I'd like to ask just one final question, John. What do you think your legacy will be to future generations of listeners?
Well, that's a question I don't think anybody, I don't think anyone ever has an answer for that one, but I would say that billions of people have lived, and probably there are billions alive right now. And so few of any of us are remembered for anything. Parents, teachers, practitioners, scholars, writers. A few of us are remembered, and any of us that are remembered for anything that's positive, I think is quite an honor and quite a great blessing. If there is a civilization beyond the age of electricity and the microbes don't entirely take over, some of us may be remembered. And my contribution to music is certainly the tiniest head of the tiniest pin when you look at what we've had in the last 300 or 400 years and speculate on what is going to come from this generation and beyond. The art of music is an organic, enormous, humanizing and human force. We all make the contributions that we can. Mozart has walked around this planet, and Beethoven has also. So modesty can become most of us if I can be appreciated at any level. I think it would be a marvelous thing. Music is to me a very simple thing. At least our system is very simple. The math of it, if we have 5 against 7 or 12 against 3, that's a big deal for us. And to a mathematician, that's like, it's grade school. And we, in our tonal system, 12 semitones, or even if you go into microtonalism, it's small stuff. You organize it metrically and orally and so on. And yet, it's big stuff in terms of the amount that it contributes to our humanity, and it's as much with us as our ability to speak and communicate. We talked about universalisms in music before, and they're certainly there, and they connect all of us, every race, every tribe, every continent. The same perfect fifths, or the same perfect fifths that vibrate our vocal cords. And so legacy, I think a life well lived is probably the best legacy any of us can hope for. And maybe to say that a contributive life. You contribute to your children, to your school, to your art, if you're able, but whatever you're able to do, whether you're Beethoven or somebody very humble. I think a legacy of any kind that isn't murderous or criminal would be great.
Well, we're enormously grateful. Please help me thank John Williams.
Dean Rob Gutierrez, thank you for this invitation very much. We enjoy this. I wish I could get to know everybody. I'm sure the future in this room is going to be something glistening and brilliant in what you do. Don't spend all of your life with film, Remember Bernard Herrmann, Yes, I think music, I think I did say at the outset that I think the art of music is really threatened a bit by visual stimulation in film. It's so much a part of the addictions that we all have. So as musicians, we need to be, work a little bit toward in the area, you and I were talking about power in film. I think the stronger we can bring, or more frequently we can bring strong composers into that area, we'll be rewarded we can be with more frequent appearance of really good scores. You don't get very many, I think. Fewer and fewer in the last decade or two, so you can do film, get to work. Great contribution. Thanks for this time. You've been very sweet. I wish I could meet all of you personally and look to know your work. I appreciate spending the hour with you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, John.